Have you ever wondered why the people we love the most are often the ones we hurt the most? We intend to protect and nurture them, yet our actions can leave lasting scars, sometimes without us even realizing it. We tell ourselves that it's all done out of love, but can love really be an excuse for controlling someone's life? Imagine a child who grows up under the weight of expectations so heavy that it feels suffocating. A bright, talented child filled with potential, but instead of being celebrated for their uniqueness, they are molded and shaped into someone else's vision of success. No room is left for them to dream, to play, to explore their own identity. Slowly, the joy in their life fades, and what's left is a shadow of a person who feels trapped in a role they never wanted to play. But this isn't just the story of a child. It's the story of many of us, adults who still carry the weight of expectations placed upon us long ago. Some of us are even passing those same burdens down to our loved ones, thinking we know what's best for them. We believe that in guiding them, we are helping them succeed. But are we truly helping, or are we projecting our own unresolved desires and fears onto them? Before we can offer real love to someone else, we need to understand how to love ourselves. But what does self-love really mean? It's not the indulgent, superficial version we often see promoted. Real self-love means healing the wounds we carry, letting go of the control we try to exert over others, and learning to accept people, including ourselves, as they are, not as we wish they would be. In this video, we'll explore the delicate balance between love, control, and freedom. We'll dive into stories of people who have struggled with these challenges, showing how love, when misunderstood, can become a prison. And most importantly, we'll look at how we can break free from these patterns, learning to love ourselves and others in a way that brings genuine happiness, not pain. Let's begin by reflecting on the story of a child burdened by expectations. Through their experience, we'll uncover valuable lessons that apply to all of us, whether we're parents, children, or partners. The question we must ask ourselves is this: are we truly loving, or are we controlling in the name of love? The weight of expectations. Imagine being 12 years old, excelling in a subject that others find difficult, and winning accolades for your achievements. You should feel proud, maybe even excited about the future, but instead you feel a constant, invisible weight pressing down on you. The closer you get to the top, the heavier it feels. Why? Because every step forward only seems to increase the pressure to achieve even more. No matter how well you do, it's never quite enough. This was the reality for a young boy who had just placed 12th in an international math competition, an incredible feat by any standard. But to his mother, it was a failure. Her dreams for him were bigger. She had mapped out a path to success in her mind, and he had fallen short. Rather than celebrating his accomplishment, she focused on what could have been. In her eyes, he should have been in the top 5, if only he had studied harder. If only he hadn't allowed distractions like swimming and spending time with friends to take him off course. The boy's 12th place felt like a defeat, not because of his own feelings, but because of the crushing expectations of his mother. Behind this dynamic lies a painful reality that many children face: the burden of parental pressure. This boy, once full of potential and passion, slowly began to retreat into himself. He stopped talking to his mother, avoiding any interaction with her. He closed the door to his room and shut the world out. The joy of learning disappeared, replaced by a sense of dread. In his young mind, the only way out seemed to be through two drastic options: either escape the pressure by becoming an ordinary person with no accolades, or, tragically, ending his life. The story of this boy is not unique. It's a story echoed in the lives of many children around the world, particularly in cultures where academic success is seen as the ultimate path to a prosperous future. The psychological toll of high expectations. Parental pressure is often born out of love, albeit a misguided one. Parents, wanting the best for their children, believe that pushing them toward success is the surest way to secure their future. But when does encouragement cross the line into control? For many children, this line blurs early in life, as they begin to equate their self-worth with their achievements. When success becomes the only measure of love, children learn to hide their true feelings, bury their personal desires, and focus solely on meeting the expectations placed upon them. Psychologically, this creates a profound sense of alienation. Children who are constantly pushed to excel often internalize the belief that they are not good enough as they are. The constant drive for perfection leaves little room for self-discovery, play, or relaxation. Instead of growing into their own person, they grow into the person their parents want them to be, which can lead to anxiety, depression, and a feeling of emptiness. The toll this takes is immense. Children like the boy in our story begin to feel trapped, not just by their parents' expectations, but by the roles they are forced to play. They become high achievers not because they want to excel, but because they are afraid of disappointing their parents. The once natural joy of learning, playing, and exploring becomes clouded by a fear of failure, and this fear, over time, can turn into resentment, emotional withdrawal, and even deep psychological trauma. The societal pressure for success. In many cultures, particularly in Asia, success is often tied to academic achievement. This emphasis on education stems from a long history where knowledge and education were seen as the primary means to rise in social status and secure financial stability. For generations, parents have passed down the belief that success in school equates to success in life. This belief is deeply ingrained in the cultural fabric, where high academic achievement is often the gold standard for personal worth. In countries like China, Japan, South Korea, and Vietnam, students face enormous pressure to excel academically. The education system itself is highly competitive, with national exams determining access to top universities, which in turn decide future career prospects. This creates a culture where students are driven not by curiosity or a love of learning, but by the sheer necessity of staying ahead in a relentless race for success. This societal pressure extends beyond the classroom. For many families, a child's success is viewed as a reflection of the family's status. Parents take pride in their child's academic accomplishments, using them as a way to elevate their own social standing. A child's failure, on the other hand, can be seen as a source of shame, not just for the individual but for the entire family. This cultural backdrop only intensifies the pressure, as children are made to feel responsible for maintaining the family's honor. The impact of this pressure is profound. Children learn early on that their value is tied to their performance. They are taught to prioritize achievement over personal happiness, often sacrificing social relationships, hobbies, and even their mental health in the process. And while the intention may be to secure a successful future, the cost is often an immense emotional burden that children carry well into adulthood. Real-life example. A high school student pressured into a career they don't want. Take, for example, the story of Min, a high school student from Vietnam. From a young age, Min excelled in science and math, and his parents were thrilled. His father, an engineer, had always dreamed that his son would follow in his footsteps. Min, however, had a different dream. He wanted to become an artist. Drawing and painting were his passions, and he spent hours each day sketching, imagining a future filled with creativity. But as Min grew older, his parents' expectations grew stronger. They believed that a career in the arts was too risky, too unstable. They wanted him to have a secure future, and in their eyes, engineering was the only way to achieve that. Every conversation with his parents revolved around his future as an engineer. They began enrolling him in extra math and science classes, taking him to seminars on engineering careers, and discouraging him from spending too much time on his art. Min's passion for art slowly faded as the pressure mounted. He began to feel guilty for wanting something different, for wanting a career that his parents didn't approve of. He stopped drawing altogether, fearing that it would only disappoint them more. Instead, he buried himself in his studies, trying to live up to the image his parents had created for him. By the time Min reached his final year of high school, he had become a top student in his science classes. To his teachers and peers, he seemed like a success story, a student destined for a bright future in engineering. But inside, Min felt empty. His heart wasn't in his studies, and the thought of spending the rest of his life in a career he didn't care about filled him with dread. One night, after weeks of sleepless nights and growing anxiety, Min finally broke down. He confessed to his parents that he didn't want to be an engineer. He told them about his dream of becoming an artist, of how he had hidden his true desires for years out of fear of disappointing them. His parents were shocked. They hadn't realized how much pressure they had placed on him or how deeply it had affected him. They thought they were guiding him towards a secure future, but in reality they had been pushing him away from the life he truly wanted. Min's story is not an isolated case. Around the world, countless students are pressured into careers they don't want, forced to prioritize their parents' dreams over their own. The psychological toll of this pressure can be devastating. Many students like Min end up feeling disconnected from their own passions, unsure of who they are or what they truly want out of life. Personal reflection on the story. As I reflect on stories like that of Min and the 12-year-old boy in the original account, I can't help but think about how universal this struggle is. We all want the best for the people we love, but how often do we stop to ask if what we want for them aligns with what they want for themselves? It's easy to project our own dreams, fears, and expectations onto others, especially when it comes to children. But true love, I believe, is about allowing others the freedom to grow into who they are meant to be, not who we want them to be. This section has only scratched the surface of the pressures that come from parental expectations, especially in cultures that prioritize success over personal happiness. But the question we must ask ourselves is this: are we guiding our loved ones towards a future that will make them happy? Or are we trapping them in a life that meets our own desires at the cost of their joy? The white frog metaphor, a powerful lesson on control. In certain regions of the world, there is an ancient and curious culinary tradition involving the transformation of a tadpole into a white frog. The tadpole is placed inside a young coconut, the hole is sealed, and the coconut is buried underground for weeks. During that time, the tadpole consumes the coconut's liquid, growing into a frog that is white and blind. It no longer has the freedom to leap, swim, or even move. Although beautiful and rare, this frog is no longer able to live as nature intended. It becomes an exotic delicacy, admired for its appearance but deprived of the essence of its true nature. This metaphor of the white frog can be applied to the relationships where love, rather than nurturing freedom and individuality, becomes a cage. Like the tadpole, the child raised in an environment of overbearing love consumes the expectations and ideals of their parents or caregivers. While the intentions may be good, wanting the child to grow strong and successful, the child ultimately becomes a version of themselves that is molded and confined by others' desires. They may emerge seemingly perfect on the outside, achieving the accolades and milestones expected of them. But inside, they are stifled, blind to their own passions and incapable of living life freely. The white frog is a poignant symbol of what happens when love lacks boundaries. While many of us believe that loving someone means doing everything in our power to protect, guide, and shape their lives, this well-intentioned love can quickly turn into control. And when control replaces freedom, it comes with a high cost, a cost that can manifest in psychological and emotional turmoil. The story of a child under an overbearing parent. Let's dive into the story of Lynn, a young girl who grew up under the care of an overbearing mother. From a young age, Lynn showed an interest in music, particularly the piano. She loved the way her fingers danced across the keys, and for a while playing piano was a joyful, creative outlet. However, as Lynn's talent became apparent, her mother saw an opportunity for success. Lynn's mother, who had always wanted to be a pianist but never had the chance, began to live vicariously through her daughter. At first, the encouragement seemed harmless, signing Lynn up for lessons, buying her a better piano, and attending all her recitals. But over time, the mother's dreams for her daughter began to take over. Lynn was no longer playing the piano for fun. She was playing to meet her mother's growing expectations. Every day after school, Lynn would practice for hours, not because she wanted to, but because she was afraid of disappointing her mother. The praise she once received for her efforts turned into criticism. "You need to focus more," her mother would say. "If you want to be the best, you can't waste time on other things." Other things, like spending time with friends, exploring other hobbies, or simply relaxing, became irrelevant in her mother's eyes. Over time, Lynn began to lose her love for the piano. What once brought her joy now brought her stress and anxiety. She no longer played for herself, but to satisfy her mother's ambitions. Lynn's mother didn't see her daughter's growing unhappiness. All she saw were the accolades Lynn was receiving at competitions. As long as Lynn was winning, everything seemed perfect. But inside, Lynn felt empty. By the time Lynn reached high school, she was on the verge of burnout. Her grades were slipping, she had few close friends, and she dreaded the thought of playing the piano. But she couldn't stop. She felt trapped in a role she hadn't chosen for herself. Lynn's mother had made it clear that quitting wasn't an option. "You're so talented," her mother would say. "You can't give up now." Lynn's story illustrates the dangerous cost of love without boundaries. What started as a mother's desire to nurture her daughter's talent turned into a relentless drive for success, ignoring Lynn's emotional needs and personal desires. The love that was supposed to support Lynn's growth instead became a source of pressure and control, slowly chipping away at her identity and happiness. The psychological impact, love as control. Lynn's experience is not uncommon, particularly in families where high achievement is valued above all else. Parents who overstep the boundaries between guidance and control often justify their behavior as love. After all, they want what's best for their children, right? But when love becomes controlling, it can cause serious psychological damage. Research shows that children who grow up under controlling or overbearing parents are more likely to develop issues with anxiety, depression, and self-esteem. They may excel academically or in their chosen fields, but this success often comes at the expense of their emotional well-being. The need to please their parents, coupled with the fear of failure, creates an environment where children feel they must constantly perform. This performance-based love can lead to a deep sense of inadequacy, as children internalize the message that they are only worthy of love when they succeed. Lynn's case is an example of how a parent's unchecked ambitions can have long-lasting consequences. While her mother may have believed she was helping her daughter by pushing her towards success, the emotional burden placed on Lynn was immense. Over time, Lynn began to lose her sense of self. She no longer knew if she was playing the piano because she loved it, or because she was afraid of what her mother would think if she stopped. This emotional conflict can lead to an identity crisis, where children struggle to distinguish between their own desires and the expectations imposed on them by others. The dangers of placing emotional burdens on loved ones. One of the most insidious dangers of love without boundaries is the way it shifts emotional burdens onto the very people we claim to care for. In Lynn's case, her mother's unresolved dreams and desires became Lynn's responsibility. The mother, who had given up on her own dreams of becoming a pianist, projected those dreams onto her daughter, expecting her to succeed where she had failed. But no child should be responsible for fulfilling the emotional needs of their parents. This dynamic, where children are made to carry the emotional weight of their parents' unfulfilled dreams, often leads to deep psychological wounds. Children, especially those who are naturally empathetic, may feel obligated to meet these expectations, even if it means sacrificing their own happiness. This creates a toxic cycle, where children become emotionally dependent on their parents' approval, losing their sense of autonomy in the process. In psychological terms, this is often referred to as enmeshment, a situation where the boundaries between individuals become blurred, and one person's emotional needs are placed above another's. Enmeshment can lead to significant mental health challenges, including anxiety, depression, and a diminished sense of self. Children who grow up in enmeshed families may struggle to form healthy relationships as adults, as they've been conditioned to prioritize the emotional well-being of others over their own. Lynns Story is a textbook case of enmeshment. Her mother's identity became intertwined with Lynn's success, to the point where Lynn felt she couldn't quit playing piano without devastating her mother. The emotional burden placed on Lynn was overwhelming, and it's no surprise that she began to experience burnout and a loss of identity. This is the danger of love without boundaries. It turns relationships into emotional battlegrounds, where one person's needs are sacrificed for another's. Personal reflection. Breaking free from love's chains. Reflecting on Lynn's story, I am reminded of how easy it is to cross the line between loving someone and controlling them. Love is meant to be a gift, something that allows us to grow and thrive. But when love becomes about control, it can stifle the very thing it's meant to nurture. The metaphor of the white frog is a haunting reminder of what happens when we impose our desires onto others. We may think we are protecting them, guiding them towards a better future, but in reality, we are trapping them in a life they never chose. This issue extends beyond parent-child relationships. In romantic partnerships, friendships, and even professional environments, the desire to control can creep in under the guise of care. How often do we find ourselves imposing our will on others thinking we know what's best for them? It's a dangerous pattern that can have devastating consequences for both parties involved. As we explore the theme of love and control, it's important to remember that true love doesn't seek to control. It seeks to understand. It creates space for the other person to grow, make mistakes, and find their own path. This doesn't mean that we should be indifferent to the people we care about, but rather that we should respect their autonomy. To love without boundaries doesn't mean to love recklessly. It means loving in a way that honors the other person's individuality, even if that means letting go of our own expectations for them. Personal reflection. Breaking free from love's chains. Reflecting on Lynn's story, I am reminded of how easy it is to cross the line between loving someone and controlling them. Love is meant to be a gift, something that allows us to grow and thrive. But when love becomes about control, it can stifle the very thing it's meant to nurture. The metaphor of the white frog is a haunting reminder of what happens when we impose our desires onto others. We may think we are protecting them, guiding them towards a better future, but in reality, we are trapping them in a life they never chose. This issue extends beyond parent-child relationships. In romantic partnerships, friendships, and even professional environments, the desire to control can creep in under the guise of care. How often do we find ourselves imposing our will on others thinking we know what's best for them? It's a dangerous pattern that can have devastating consequences for both parties involved. As we explore the theme of love and control, it's important to remember that true love doesn't seek to control. It seeks to understand. It creates space for the other person to grow, make mistakes, and find their own path. This doesn't mean that we should be indifferent to the people we care about, but rather that we should respect their autonomy. To love without boundaries doesn't mean to love recklessly. It means loving in a way that honors the other person's individuality, even if that means letting go of our own expectations for them. Buddhist philosophy on self-love and non-attachment. In Buddhist philosophy, self-love and non-attachment are intertwined principles that guide us toward inner peace and harmonious relationships. The core teaching of Buddhism revolves around understanding suffering, dukkha, and finding ways to transcend it. A key part of this journey is learning how to love ourselves without clinging to the material world or the people around us. This is where the concept of non-attachment comes into play. Non-attachment doesn't mean detaching from the people we love or neglecting our responsibilities. Rather, it is about loving in a way that does not bind ourselves or others to expectations, conditions, or possessiveness. In Buddhist thought, clinging, whether it is to ideas, people, or outcomes, leads to suffering because everything in life is impermanent. If we tie our happiness to something that is temporary, we inevitably set ourselves up for disappointment when that thing changes or disappears. When applied to relationships, this philosophy teaches us that we should love without expecting the person we love to fulfill our needs or desires. We must not seek to control or shape them into something that fits our idea of who they should be. Instead, we love them as they are, allowing them to grow and evolve in their own way, without trying to impose our will on them. This form of non-attached love fosters a sense of freedom and space, allowing both individuals to flourish. Self-love, in this context, is about recognizing our own value and worth without seeking validation from external sources. It involves being compassionate toward ourselves, acknowledging our flaws, and understanding that we do not need to be perfect to be worthy of love. This is where mindfulness becomes a powerful tool. By practicing mindfulness, we learn to observe our thoughts and feelings without judgment, allowing us to detach from the fears and insecurities that drive controlling behavior. Mindfulness as a tool for breaking free from controlling behaviors. Mindfulness, a practice rooted in Buddhism, is a way of being fully present in the moment without being consumed by past regrets or future anxieties. By cultivating mindfulness, we become aware of our own thoughts, feelings, and actions, giving us the ability to step back and observe how we interact with others. This awareness is crucial for breaking free from controlling behaviors. Control in relationships often stems from fear. The fear of losing someone, the fear of being inadequate, or the fear of being unloved. When we are unaware of these underlying fears, they can manifest as possessiveness, jealousy, or the need to impose our will on others. Mindfulness helps us recognize these fears before they take over. By paying attention to our emotions, we can notice when we are acting out of fear rather than love. For example, a parent might push their child toward a particular career because they are afraid the child will fail in life without their guidance. This fear can lead to controlling behavior, where the parent dictates the child's choices in an attempt to ensure their success. However, through mindfulness, the parent can recognize that this desire to control is rooted in their own anxiety, not in the child's actual needs. With this awareness, the parent can take a step back, allowing the child to make their own decisions while offering support from a place of love rather than fear. Mindfulness also teaches us to let go of the idea that we are responsible for other people's happiness. While we can offer love, support, and guidance, we cannot control how others feel or what choices they make. By accepting this, we free ourselves from the burden of trying to fix others or make them conform to our expectations. This creates healthier, more balanced relationships where both parties are free to be themselves, a parent learning to let go. Consider the story of Mai, a mother of 2 children who had always been deeply involved in their lives. Mai's love for her children was undeniable, but her need to control their future was overwhelming. From the moment they started school, she meticulously planned their education, extracurricular activities, and even their social circles. Mai believed she was doing everything out of love, wanting to give her children the best opportunities in life. Her eldest daughter, Ha, was particularly bright and excelled in school. However, Ha had a passion for art, and she often spoke about wanting to pursue a career as an illustrator. Mai, who came from a family of engineers, couldn't accept this. She saw art as an unstable profession and feared that her daughter wouldn't be able to support herself. Instead of encouraging Ha's passion, Mai enrolled her in science and math programs, telling herself that it was for her daughter's own good. As the years passed, the tension between Mai and Ha grew. Ha became withdrawn, avoiding conversations with her mother about the future. She continued to do well in school, but her enthusiasm for learning had faded. By the time she reached her final year of high school, Ha was visibly anxious and depressed. She didn't know how to tell her mother that she had no interest in the career path that had been chosen for her. One day, during a heated argument, Ha finally broke down. She tearfully told her mother how much pressure she had been feeling and how deeply unhappy she was. She confessed that the only reason she had followed the path her mother had set for her was because she didn't want to disappoint her. Mai was shocked. She had always believed that she was acting out of love, never realizing the toll her expectations were taking on her daughter's mental health. That night, Mai reflected on her daughter's words. She began to see that her need to control Ha's future was rooted in her own fears. Fears about financial stability, societal judgment, and her own sense of inadequacy as a mother. The next day, Mai made a decision to let go. She sat down with Ha and apologized, telling her that she was free to choose her own path. Mai promised to support her, no matter what she decided to do. Ha's response was immediate. The relief on her face was unmistakable, and over the following weeks her mood improved dramatically. She began working on her art portfolio with a renewed sense of purpose, and her relationship with her mother softened. For the first time in years, they were able to talk openly, without the tension of unspoken expectations hanging over them. Mai's decision to let go wasn't easy. It required her to confront her own fears and insecurities, and to trust that her daughter could find her way without being micromanaged. But in doing so, she allowed Ha the freedom to pursue her own passions, which ultimately brought them closer together. Breaking the cycle of control, a personal reflection. Mai's story is a powerful reminder that love, when accompanied by control, can stifle the very people we care about. It is only when we learn to love with boundaries, when we let go of the need to control, that we allow others to truly thrive. This is the essence of non-attached love as taught in Buddhist philosophy. To love without clinging, to care without possessing, and to guide without dictating. For many of us, letting go is one of the hardest things to do. We want the best for our loved ones, and it's natural to want to protect them from harm or failure. But when our love turns into control, it ceases to be nurturing and becomes suffocating. We must learn to trust that others, whether they are our children, partners, or friends, are capable of making their own choices and finding their own way. This trust, however, starts with trusting ourselves. When we cultivate self-love and mindfulness, we begin to heal the parts of us that drive controlling behavior. We learn to let go of our fears and insecurities, knowing that we do not need to control others to feel secure in our relationships. As we practice mindfulness, we develop the awareness to see when we are acting out of fear, and we can make a conscious choice to act out of love instead. Healing ourselves. First, in the end, the most profound way we can love others is by healing ourselves first. As the Buddha teaches, you yourself, as much as anybody in the entire universe, deserve your love and affection. By learning to love ourselves, we become less reliant on controlling others to feel whole. We recognize that our worth is not tied to how successful our children are, how much approval we receive, or how perfectly our loved ones fit into our plans. Healing ourselves means letting go of the need to control, allowing love to flow freely without the constraints of expectations or fear. Through mindfulness and self-awareness, we can break the cycle of control and create relationships that are based on mutual respect, trust, and freedom. My story demonstrates that when we let go of control, we don't lose our connection to those we love. We strengthen it. By stepping back and allowing Ha the space to grow into her own person, Mai found that her relationship with her daughter blossomed in ways she hadn't anticipated. The same can be true for all of us. When we heal ourselves, we open the door to deeper, more fulfilling connections with the people we care about. In the words of the Buddha, peace comes from within. Do not seek it without. When we find peace within ourselves, we bring that peace into our relationships, allowing love to flourish in its purest, most freeing form. How self-compassion leads to better relationships. In the pursuit of love and connection, many of us often overlook the critical foundation upon which healthy relationships are built. Self-compassion. The ability to treat ourselves with kindness, forgiveness, and understanding is not only essential for our well-being, but also has a profound effect on how we interact with others. When we lack self-compassion, we tend to project our insecurities, fears, and unmet emotional needs onto our loved ones, leading to control, misunderstanding, and conflict. But when we learn to love ourselves, we are no longer dependent on external validation to feel whole. We can love others more freely, without imposing our fears or desires onto them. Self-compassion is about recognizing our own worth without tying it to perfection or achievement. It allows us to embrace our humanity, flaws and all, and approach ourselves with the same kindness we would offer a close friend. When we cultivate self-compassion, we are less reactive to the ups and downs of life and better equipped to handle our emotions in a balanced way. This internal shift helps us approach relationships from a place of security rather than fear. Without self-compassion, relationships often become arenas where we seek to fill our inner voids. We may look to our children, partners, or friends to meet needs that we haven't addressed within ourselves, and when they fail to do so, it leads to disappointment and frustration. For example, a parent who lacks self-compassion may push their child to succeed because they need their child's achievements to validate their own worth. A partner may attempt to control their significant other's choices because they feel insecure about being left behind or unworthy of love. When we practice self-compassion, we break this cycle. We no longer seek to control others because we no longer feel that their success or behavior defines us. Instead, we approach our relationships with openness, acceptance, and love that is not conditional on meeting specific expectations. This creates a space where both we and our loved ones can thrive, without the pressure of living up to someone else's ideals. The power of letting go. Freedom in relationships. One of the most challenging aspects of love is learning to let go, to release our grip on the people we care about, and allow them the freedom to live their own lives. For many, this can be a daunting prospect. We fear that letting go means losing control, and in doing so, we risk watching our loved ones make mistakes, fail, or choose paths that differ from the ones we envisioned for them. However, true love is not about control, it is about trust. When we let go, we show our loved ones that we trust them to make their own decisions, even if those decisions lead to challenges or failures. It is through these experiences that people grow, learn, and become their authentic selves. Love that comes with control, on the other hand, stifles growth. It places limits on the other person's ability to explore their potential and can lead to feelings of resentment and emotional suffocation. Letting go is not about abandoning responsibility or ceasing to care. Rather, it is about shifting our role from one of control to one of support. We remain present, offering our guidance and love, but we allow the other person the space to make their own choices. This kind of love is liberating. It frees both the giver and the receiver from the weight of expectations and fosters deeper trust and intimacy. In a parent-child relationship, for example, letting go might mean allowing a child to pursue a passion that doesn't align with the parent's dreams. While it can be difficult for a parent to watch their child take a path that feels risky or unconventional, the act of trusting the child to follow their own calling strengthens the relationship. The child feels respected, understood, and empowered, which ultimately leads to a deeper bond with the parent. The same principle applies in romantic relationships. A partner who trusts their significant other to make their own decisions, even if those decisions involve uncertainty or risk, creates an environment where both individuals feel valued for who they are, not for how well they meet each other's expectations. This trust fosters emotional security, allowing both partners to grow individually while staying connected as a couple. How non-attachment strengthens love. One of the most important lessons we can learn about love is that it is not synonymous with attachment. In fact, when love is intertwined with attachment, it often leads to suffering. Attachment is the desire to hold on to someone or something, to possess it, and to make it conform to our desires. But true love is not about possession, it is about freedom. Non-attachment in relationships doesn't mean emotional detachment or indifference. Rather, it means loving without trying to control the other person. It means recognizing that the people we care about are separate individuals with their own journeys, desires, and needs. When we love with attachment, we often try to mold the other person into our idea of who they should be. We may feel entitled to their choices or demand that they conform to our expectations. But this kind of love is conditional and ultimately leads to tension and dissatisfaction. In contrast, non-attached love is about supporting the other person's autonomy and respecting their right to make their own choices. This doesn't mean we stop caring or that we don't offer guidance when needed. It simply means that we let go of the need to control outcomes. We accept that we cannot always protect our loved ones from mistakes or hardship, but we can be there for them through it all, offering unconditional love and support. Practicing non-attachment in love requires self-awareness and mindfulness. It involves regularly checking in with ourselves to ensure that we are not acting out of fear, insecurity, or the desire to control. It means being present in the relationship without trying to manipulate its direction. This creates a relationship based on trust and respect, where both individuals feel free to be themselves. The transformative power of loving with boundaries. Loving with boundaries doesn't mean putting up walls or distancing ourselves emotionally. It means setting healthy limits on how much we involve ourselves in the lives of others, particularly when it comes to trying to control or fix their problems. It's about recognizing that we can love deeply without sacrificing our own well-being or imposing our desires onto the other person. Boundaries are essential in any relationship because they protect both individuals from becoming overly enmeshed or dependent on each other. In relationships where boundaries are blurred, one person may end up feeling overwhelmed by the emotional needs or expectations of the other. This can lead to resentment, burnout, and a sense of losing oneself in the relationship. When we love with boundaries, we give others the space to grow independently, and we respect their individuality. We don't try to control or direct their growth. We simply offer our support as they navigate their own path. This type of love is empowering because it honors both the connection between people and the separateness that allows each person to flourish. Loving with boundaries also involves recognizing our own limitations. We cannot be everything to everyone, nor should we try to be. It's important to acknowledge when we need space, when we need to focus on our own needs, and when we need to step back from trying to fix someone else's life. By respecting our own boundaries, we model healthy behavior for others and encourage them to do the same. The path to true love: acceptance, trust, and freedom. At its core, true love is about acceptance. It is about seeing the people we care about as they truly are, not as we wish them to be. It's about loving them for their authentic selves, even if that means letting go of our expectations or dreams for them. This kind of love is not conditional on behavior or achievements. It is grounded in a deep respect for the other person's individuality. Trust is another key element of true love. When we trust the people we love, we allow them the freedom to make their own choices, to learn from their mistakes, and to grow in their own time. This trust creates a sense of security in the relationship because it communicates that we value the other person's autonomy. It says, "I believe in you and I trust that you can handle your own life." Finally, true love is about freedom. It is the freedom to be ourselves, to make choices that reflect our true desires, and to pursue our own path, even if it differs from what others might expect. When we give our loved ones this freedom, we strengthen the relationship because we are no longer trying to control or limit them. Instead, we are supporting them in becoming the best version of themselves, the journey toward true love. As we reflect on the lessons of love, it becomes clear that the path to true love is one of self-compassion, trust, acceptance, and freedom. Loving someone doesn't mean controlling them or making their choices for them. It means supporting them, respecting their individuality, and allowing them to navigate their own journey. It means recognizing that love is not about possession or attachment, but about giving others the space to grow and thrive. True love starts with ourselves. When we cultivate self-compassion and learn to accept our own imperfections, we become better equipped to love others without imposing our fears or insecurities onto them. We can let go of the need to control, trusting that our loved ones can find their way just as we are finding ours. In this space of mutual respect and freedom, love can flourish in its most authentic form. In the end, the greatest gift we can offer to those we love is the freedom to be themselves. When we release our grip, let go of control, and trust in the strength of our relationships, we discover that true love is not about holding on tightly, but about letting go. And in that letting go, we find a deeper, more meaningful connection, one that is based on trust, respect, and unconditional love.